Connecting links, a Dvar Torah for Parashat Pekudey. Something about the location of the tabernacle vessels confuses me. Make that two things. I understand why the Aron is where it is, covered deep in Kodesh HaKodeshim. The Menorah and the table should be in the living room or the Kodesh, and the Mizbach HaOlah should be outside because playing with fire in the house could have dire consequences. The vessels that confuse me are Mizbach HaKtoret and the Kior, each for its own reasons. The difficulty I have with the location of Mizbach HaKtoret is its function, which requires us to understand its role. The altar's purpose is mentioned in Parashat Tetzaveh, where we understand that its function is to burn incense. Ktoret. Why? No reason. Incense is burned because incense is burned. The only additional information the Torah volunteers is that the time of the burning is every morning when Aharon tends the lamp. What, if so, is my problem with the golden altar? Simply put, in our parasha, it has a different role. In our parasha, the altar's purpose is to burn incense before the Ark of the Testimony. Okay, so now what's my problem? According to the description in the verses, and as the sages also understand, the incense-burning altar is the vessel furthest from the Ark of the Testimony among the inner vessels, even though its roommates don't seem to have anything directly to do with the Ark. Meaning, it doesn't say, "And you shall bring the menorah and light its lamps before the Ark of the Testimony." If among the inner vessels only the altar serves the Ark, wouldn't it make more sense to bring it closer to the Ark? The location of the kiel also raises an eyebrow. What is its purpose? To wash hands and feet. When? It depends on how you check. All the verses of Sefer Shmot that describe the kiel associate it with Mizbach HaOlah. What do I mean? The kiel is mentioned by name in the Parshiot HaMishkan 9 times. 7 of these verses will explicitly mention the altar. For example, the altar of burnt offering with its copper grating, its poles and all its utensils, the kiel and its base. Why did I choose this verse? Because these psukim, each central vessel gets its own verse, except for Mizbach HaOlah and the kiel, which share a verse. And why am I not ashamed to give as an example that specifically supports what I want to say? Because it represents 4 out of the 7 verses I'm talking about. The obvious conclusion so far is the kiel is connected to Mizbach HaOlah. To reinforce this conclusion, I want to point out that you can see another clear connection between the altar and the kiel. These are the copper vessels. Unlike the inner vessels, which are made, or at least plated with, gold, the outer altars and the kiel are made or plated with copper. What about the other 3 verses? All 3 place the kiel between Ohel Moed and the altar. Why does this point bother me? Isn't the proximity to the altar further proof of my theory? This requires a short lesson in the structure of the tabernacle. To enter the Mishkan, one first enters through the curtain at the gate of the courtyard. After crossing an empty courtyard, we reach the outer Mizbach HaOlah. Only after passing the altar do we reach the kiel, which stands between the altar and Ohel Moed, the tent where, when we enter through the curtains, we will see the golden Mizbach HaKtoret, the table, the menorah, and the high priest who can also see the ark once a year behind an additional curtain. If the kiel is primarily meant to serve the altar, wouldn't it make more sense for it to be placed before the altar and not behind it, between it and the Ohel Moed? Here come a few consecutive minor surprises. First, the initial verses that mention the kiel state that Aharon and his sons need to wash their hands and feet from it in 2 cases. When they enter Ohel Moed, they shall wash with water so that they do not die, and when they approach the altar to minister lehaktir ishe. In other words, according to this, the kiel is first connected to the inside and only then to the outside. Second, although the act of Haktara is not unique to incense, one could have defined what happens on the altar differently using words such as sacrificing, lakriv, giving, latet, serving, lahagish, or perhaps even lizboach, slaughtering. It's a mizbeach. Why do they wash when they approach the altar lehaktir? This question takes on greater significance when you notice that the last vessel fully introduced before introducing the kiel is Mizbach HaKtoret, not Mizbach HaOlah, all this the first time that the kiel is mentioned. But these are minor setbacks. In Melachim Aleph Perek Zayin, we have a description of the temple vessels. Two vessels are very prominent in this description. The Kior stands out because it's mentioned 7 times, apart from Shlomo's sea, which is a large Kior mentioned 6 additional times. That is way more than any other vessel. Mizbach HaOlah also stands out because it's not mentioned in this chapter even once. The far-reaching conclusion of that is that in the temple, the strong connection between the Kior and Mizbach HaOlah is severed. This is why it seems worth remembering that, as we said, the Kior had 2 roles. The first was to serve the altar, but the second was to prepare for entry into the sanctuary. Who do we immediately meet upon entering the sanctuary? Mizbach HaKtoret, the same altar whose function in the verse was to serve the ark, the same altar that the first encounter with was just before the encounter with the Kior, the same altar upon which incense is burned. The Kior, made of copper, is not only a means of preparation for the outer copper service, its role is also to connect the outer copper service with the inner golden service, whose first representative is Mizbach HaKtoret, a vessel that the coordinating Kior can relate to. According to this understanding, the location of Mizbach HaKtoret before the Ark of Testimony also becomes a bit clearer. Its belonging to the Ark of the Testimony is not because of its proximity to the Ark, but because it is located at the transition point between the outer vessels, Mizbach HaKtoret's vessels, and the inner vessels, the Ark's vessels. In memory of my beloved and heroic student Amichai Shimon ben Yishai and Batya Rubin, Hashem Yikom Damo, I am Dovi Holtz, one who loves Tanakh.